Hello and welcome to Leader Feeder. I'm Suzanne Jakes, the marketing coordinator here at Unique Training and Development. And on Leader Feeder, we like to share tips and practical strategies for frontline leaders. And we do that with Kirk Langford, our general manager. Hi, Kirk.
Hello, Suze. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm great today. Thanks.
Good.
Today we are talking about elevating plant performance. We sat down and kind of talked about maybe some skills that we thought would help frontline leaders with their plant performance.
That's right. We sure did.
Yeah. So there are some 4 things that we wanted to chat about. And the first one is empowerment. So Kirk, how it's such a big word, right?
Yeah. The almighty empowerment.
The almighty empowerment. And it's one of our favorite things that we like to talk about because it's it's so great, right? Yeah. So how could empowerment help a frontline leader improve plant performance?
Yeah. Well, so empowerment, my goodness. Empowerment helps improve a plant's performance because we see a lot of what we would call decision-making waste. You could also say the more positive side is maybe like decision-making empowerment. And what that means is that at a certain level, you have people that should be able to make certain decisions, solve certain problems on their own, right? Or at their level without having to go to their manager or their leader or their leader's leader to get an answer. And what we hear from a lot of our clients is that that's not happening. So problems and questions are being escalated 1 or 2 levels higher than they need to be in order to get resolved.
Yep.
And so what that means is that someone that's getting paid a certain amount to solve a certain problem, now that problem is costing a lot more money to get solved because instead of them feeling empowered to solve the problem and go, yeah, I'm just going to try this out. This is what I think makes sense. Instead, they're escalating it further than it needs to be. And so those people, the managers or the managers of the managers, are solving problems that are way below them to be solving. They were hired to do other things, right? So empowerment's really important in terms of improving performance because we don't often think of it because we talk a lot about waste when we think of physical materials, right? Scrap, but decision-making waste is also a form of waste because if there's a frontline leader that is escalating decisions constantly to a manager or above, or if there's someone on my team who is constantly bringing me, the frontline leader, decisions that I have to make when I know that they're capable of making them, or with a little bit of coaching or training they'd be capable, then that's a form of waste. So empowerment will improve my performance because the more I can empower as a frontline leader, the more that I can empower my team members to answer their own questions, solve some of their own problems, and deal with some of those situations that they previously used to have to come to me for. I'm creating less waste. I'm being more efficient, and that's going to, generally speaking, improve the performance of my team, therefore improve the performance of the plant. Yeah,
it gives the frontline leader a bit more time, right? To
frees up some time for them too to focus on sort of bigger problems or higher level, higher value problems. That's right.
Or get the things done and organized that they kind of keep pushing off because they're always putting out fires.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Amazing. Our second skill is accountability and feedback.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds like 2, but it is one, right?
Together. Yeah. So accountability and feedback work well together because, and it actually works nicely with empowerment because if you're going to empower someone to do something, to try something new, to take on a skill they hadn't done before, to solve a problem that they previously would have come to you for, that's the empowerment side. That's the giving that responsibility, that encouragement. The flip side to that is the accountability, which is holding them accountable to the consequences of their actions. And when I say that, it definitely sounds negative, like I'm going to hold you responsible.
Right. It always sounds bad.
But that doesn't necessarily mean it will be bad. Because what if you do try to solve the problem on your own, you do a great job, or maybe not a perfect job, but you do a really good job, and I go, see? I don't need to be asked for a lot of this stuff. You clearly have this, this process really well pat down. You don't need to have me solve the problem for you or explain the process. So accountability is both, it can be negative, but it can also be positive. Right. Accountability is just holding people accountable in good situations and in bad. And so when it's good, it's more celebration, right? Hey, I gave you the opportunity to kind of solve that problem on your own. You threw the suggestion at me. I said, go for it. It worked. Congratulations. You clearly understand the process. You clearly understand what needed to be done, and I appreciate that.
Takes a bit of calmness from the leader too, because what if, we celebrate the wins, but then if it doesn't turn out good, like remain calm.
That's where the feedback comes in.
Approach
That's
it
where
calmly.
the feedback comes in. Instead of, I need to punish somebody, right? I need to go fix someone else's problem. No, I need to provide feedback so they can fix their own problem. or I need to provide feedback so they can do better next time.
Right.
It's not, I'm going to go clean up your mess for you. It's okay. Yeah, we made a mistake.
Walk me
that's all
through
right.
the steps and let's
Walk me
see
through
what
you
happened.
did. Let's see how we can improve it. Let's see we can fix this mess together. That's really what the feedback piece is, and why it's so linked to accountability. Because again, accountability, when it's holding someone accountable to a not so great result, it doesn't mean slapping their wrist. It doesn't mean punishing them, especially if they were just trying to do their best and they just made an honest mistake.
Yes, exactly.
Then accountability is really just about going, hey, I just appreciate that you tried.
Yep.
I appreciate that you took that stab. Let's figure out what didn't go so well so that we can do better next time, and you'll need me even less next time. So that's why the feedback and accountability go hand in hand there.
Yeah, because I think if we take a step back to empowerment, right? We're not going to empower someone to do a $5,000 job on the first time by themselves, right?
Or $50,000 or $500,000 job. That's
exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So we're empowering people within their roles and responsibilities and teaching them how to do this, and then holding them accountable. It's not just well, I told you to do it that way and you did it wrong. I think that's safe to assume that they probably everyone's going to do something wrong if they haven't been shown how.
Yeah,
right?
if you're trying to empower kind of way beyond what they're comfortable with, then that's when we actually talk about what we call the comfort zone, and then the learning zone and the panic zone. If we empower too far, we have effectively moved them from the comfort zone way past the learning zone, which is that sweet spot, and we've jumped them into the panic zone. That's sort of what we've done. And that's where they're prone to make mistakes. That's where they're prone to get really stressed and not enjoy the experience of learning and growing. So you're right. When you're a team leader and you're thinking about, or a supervisor, and you're thinking about, okay, I want them to be able to solve some of their own problems. It doesn't mean that anytime they come to you with a problem, you go, no, solve it yourself. It will mean, okay, well, when I think about this problem, I feel confident that that's something they can solve probably on their own. So I could say, well, what do you think you should do? And I listen to what you think, and I say, that sounds great. Go ahead and try that. Versus if they give me a problem that's, far beyond what they should be able to solve at this point, then I might listen and go, okay, that's what you want to do. Okay, let me give you some feedback on that idea. I want you to try it this way instead. Here's what I like about what you said. Here's what I would change. It doesn't mean that empowerment doesn't mean immediately you are no longer ever helping them or providing guidance. It just means that you're assessing, where can I give up a little bit of control to allow me to have a little bit more time to be proactive rather than putting out the fires. And then part of the accountability is zipping back to that. Is if it goes well, of course, then you say, see, you came to me. I simply asked you what you were planning on doing. You gave me a great answer. I told you to roll with it. Now look at the response, or look at the outcome. You nailed it. So next time, I don't even need you to come to me for this specific problem. I want you to know that you are empowered to make that decision, because it's clear you've demonstrated competence in that particular area or solving that particular problem. But of course, that doesn't mean, or what it means is that then if there's a more complex problem or something that's new, they'll still come to you for something else. It just means when it comes to that specific task or that specific challenge, they know, oh yeah, I know how to handle this piece. So you're giving, you're empowering a bit at a time, and so you're growing that ownership, you're growing that accountability piece.
Absolutely, that's awesome. And so our third skill for people to empower, third skill to elevate plant performance, for frontline leaders is to motivate and engage. Which, of course, is feel like always going to be a big part, right? Because we want people to be motivated to even just come to work.
Yeah, that's right. So Gallup, which is a company that does lots of research about the workplace, they just released their, I think it was called the 2025 State of the Workplace Report. And there were a couple of big takeaways, but one that they've mentioned now for several years is that the manager is actually responsible for a pretty significant part of an employee's motivation.
Yes.
I think traditionally we thought of it as like, well, your paycheck is what motivates you to show up each day.
Yes.
And yeah, that's true to some degree, for sure. We're not saying that, if you just suddenly didn't get paid, you'd still just happily show up to work. We know that just getting paid and having steady work is a motivator for a lot of people, but that only accounts for so much of the motivation that a person has. The rest of that motivation largely comes from the things that the manager, so someone's leader, does, how they celebrate, how they recognize and acknowledge the wins on a team, how they challenge the employees on the team, how they involve the team in decision making and in any way they can. So the manager has to think carefully about, what am I currently doing to motivate my team members? What am I currently doing to engage them? And if the sole answer is, well, I'm their leader, it's only my job to make sure the work gets done and the paycheck is what motivates them, I really think that as a leader, if you're listening to this, you got to shift your mindset. It can be easy to fall into that, well, that's not my job to motivate them. But let me tell you, according to what the research is showing,
yes,
the manager absolutely has a hand, and a pretty big hand, as it turns out, in the level of motivation that an employee does have. So
Agreed.
what can you do? And that can even be going to your team and being like, how do you like to be motivated?
Yeah.
And some people will say, don't ever like acknowledge me in front of the group. That's so cringe. That's so embarrassing. Don't do that. Okay. And someone else might say, well, I wouldn't mind getting acknowledgement now and then when I step in and help someone out.
Right.
Everyone's different, right? You might prefer that more in the spotlight attention, and someone else might say, no, please don't do that. Just a quick thank you to the side is kind of all I would look for.
Absolutely.
So it just depends on the person. And part of motivating is getting to know your team members to know what motivates them.
Exactly.
Because you might be really motivated by the the prospect of a promotion, right? I'm going to coach you and train you because I believe you're worthy of a promotion, and that motivates you. Someone else may go, I really like my job. I really like the work I do. I'm not particularly excited about the idea of leading other people. I don't want to manage people. And so don't like try to use a promotion to manage me or to motivate me, because it's just not something I'm working hard towards because I don't want it. But you won't know that unless you get to know your team.
Yeah.
So get to know your team, and that will help you motivate and engage them.
So exactly kind of what I was going to say next was something like, what if a frontline leader is listening now and they say, well, my team they're not motivated.
They're not
I can't motivate them. But you kind of answered it right there. Is like, well, then, find out what does motivate them, right? So
That's
maybe
right.
the promotion doesn't motivate them. Maybe cross training doesn't motivate them, but something will.
Everyone's motivated by
right?
something. And I'm not saying it's not challenging. We're not sitting here saying that it's super easy to motivate people. I think especially if you've been on a team for a long time, or you've inherited a team that is very demotivated, or a company culture that's very demotivating.
Right.
By all means, we are not saying that it's super easy to turn that around. It will take work. It takes consistence. It takes those two P words, persistence and patience. But to some degree anyway, usually that persistence and that patience, that, hey, I want to learn what motivates you. I want you to feel engaged. What can I do to help with that? Eventually, those conversations tend to pay off, even if only small bits at first. We've gone into lots of clients where, we are sitting around or sitting in a room with a group of leaders and we're presenting, and we can tell the leaders that are engaged a bit more, that are taking notes and, I really want to apply this, and the ones that sit there and truly feel, well, this has nothing to do with me, speaking about, their employees' level of motivation. So we can look in a room and go, some of you believe this, some of you don't. And often it's the ones that do believe it that if we ask the client, which ones have more motivated teams, which ones perform better, it's almost always the people with a more motivated team. And that often comes from a leader who truly believes, I do have a hand in the motivation of my employees. And in fact, it just made me think of, like, in our training program at the beginning of our motivation module, we have a part where we ask people to think about, when were you most motivated in your career?
Right.
And they take a minute to think about it. And they write either a job they had or a challenging assignment they were given or whatever. And then we say, what made it so motivating? And they take a few minutes to think about that. And then we ask them, so what'd you write down? And the answers that come up are things like, I felt recognized and appreciated for the work I did. I was given challenging or interesting assignments. The team that I worked on was very motivating. We were a very engaged team. So sort of like the camaraderie on the team was really strong, right? Pay does come up for sure. Almost always I'll say, I was paid pretty well for the work that I did, or I felt I was compensated fairly. But the neat thing about it is it's almost never the first thing. It's almost never the first thing. And it's only one thing of many. So to that point, again, to those leaders, I guess I'm really trying to be convincing here, but to any leader that might be listening to this and is skeptical that they have any sort of influence on their team members' level of motivation, I would say, our own leaders that take this training tell us, right, by this reflective exercise, they tell us all the time, oh no, the things that motivated me were like challenging assignments, which are often decided by the leader. Recognition and praise and acknowledgement when I do good work. That's the leaders, right? The leader gets to decide whether they take time to acknowledge and praise or not. All of those other factors other than pay are often things that the leader has some level of control or influence over, meaning that you do, as a leader, get a pretty big, chunk of the motivation pie when it comes to figuring out how to motivate your employees.
Absolutely. And you touched on it earlier too. If anyone's looking for a quick fix to increase their plant's performance, it's not going to happen. These things
Probably not,
take time,
Yeah,
right?
they
There's
do.
no quick fix.
They do.
It's all about, like you said, changing your mindset. Empowerment takes time.
Yeah.
You have to empower your team.
Yeah.
It takes time, right?
Yeah, for
Accountability
sure.
and feedback, that takes time.
Yeah.
To find out,
To build
even
that
find
culture.
out what motivates your team takes time, right?
right.
So,
And as actually,
like you
if I
said,
could throw in
please
an extra
do.
point here, I know we
Please
said
do.
we had like 4 tips, but if I could, you just made me think if we throw in like a 5th bonus tip, whatever.
we haven't even gotten to
well,
4.
we haven't even gotten to 4. We're already throwing in a 5th. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it makes me think of what we call in our training the hope slope, which talks about,
Yes.
things on your team don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be a perfect leader. You don't have to have things perfect from the
You
get-go.
don't have to fake sunshine and rainbows.
But people just need to get a sense that things are getting better.
Yes.
A bit at a time. So that's, when I talk about persistence and patience, it won't pay off all at once, and it doesn't, and more importantly, it doesn't need to.
Mm-hmm.
People aren't going to abandon ship if things don't get immediately 100 times better.
Right.
When they start to abandon ship is they go, God, I've been on this team for 6 months or 6 years, even worse, and things just are stagnant and or getting worse. But if things are getting better, there's a little bit more morale, people feel a little bit more engaged, they'll stay.
It looks like you're trying as a leader. It looks like their leader is putting in an effort.
Yeah. They see the culture slowly shifting, and that's a positive thing.
Hope slope. Yeah. So our 4th point or skill that we want people to know about is leading by example. Can you tell us what we mean? Because sometimes people are like, oh, I wear my PPE and so should you.
Yeah, right. And certainly that is part of leading by example, right?
Yes.
Walk the talk. So if you're telling everybody they need to wear their PPE and you don't, for sure, that comes off as hypocritical and sort of like, and not only hypocritical, but like, we have to follow the rules and they don't.
Yeah,
so
they're above the law.
They're above the
right?
law. Yeah, exactly. Or too cool for school kind of thing. So certainly we mean walking the talk, but I also think when we think of leading by example, if I can be maybe a little bit more abstract, I think it also means in terms of like the effort, your willingness to collaborate, your willingness to support and help. Like if you're never willing to help somebody out, or like we talked about with accountability being also a positive thing, if you're only ever there to rag on someone when they do something wrong and you're never there to celebrate, why is your team going to do that? When is your team going to pat each other on the back?
Good
right?
point.
You set the example of what acknowledgement looks like, of what recognition looks like. You set the example about what matters on the team by what you talk about to the team, right? And so I think you showing collaboration, you showing that you're willing to put in effort. I think we used to see leading by example strictly as like, they're able to do my job or they're willing to do my job. Yeah, that is a component. That is a big component. But at the same time, in a lot of environments, especially when I think of a lot of unionized environments, you would never have the leader doing that person's job. So then leading by example has to take on a different, it takes on a different flavor, because the whole idea is, you could say, well, I would get down on my hands and knees and scrub if I had to as well. But it's like, that will never happen. But it's more about, hey, when there's a problem or, when something's going wrong, I jump in and I go, how can I help?
Yes.
What can I do? How can we solve this problem together? I'm here to help you guys. What is it going to take? That is leading by example, because you would want your teammates to do the same thing for each other. Exactly.
Yes,
yeah. So I'd say
absolutely.
leading by example is showing that you're a leader that that is willing to jump in and willing to help and willing to support as much as it takes to get the work done.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Well, I
thanks.
hope some of our frontline leaders who are listening got some great tips out of this today, because we are really here to just try to support them, right?
Trying to help. Make really no more bad leaders is our kind of mantra, right? If nobody ever had to go to work for a bad leader, the world would be, I think, a much happier place.
Doesn't
and that's
it
what we're trying to achieve.
Yes, exactly. Trying to achieve that. So thank you so much for listening. If you liked what you heard today, you can always pass us along to
your HR manager, your T&D leaders or managers in your workplace.
Yes, or you've
contact us yourself. Right?
Exactly. We're at hello@uniquedevelopment.com. You can check us out on our webpage is uniquedevelopment.com.
Yeah. Drop us a line.
Yeah,
we'd love to hear from
absolutely.
you.
We're all over the social media, so you can also get a hold of us that way too.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, great. So that's the end today. Until next time, we'll say goodbye.
See you later.